Million Grand Cru.
A million.
Um,
Ooh.
a Grand
Okay, the
Cru
Grand
is a
Cru.
Bordeaux, but a nice, like a nicer Bordeaux.
Yeah, our sommelier said this was like a really nice.
And there's no description on the back
No, no,
to help us
let's
out.
wing it. He gave us
He
some
gave
notes,
us
but we
some
did
notes,
not
and
look at the
I'm
notes. So
realizing
let's see how good we are.
we didn't look
Gosh,
at
we
them.
drink wine a lot, so fruity.
You always say fruity. I'm going to say leathery. Our psalm can either confirm or deny which one of us is correct.
Leather. You didn't even taste it.
Oh,
Leather
I
is
smelt
like a
it.
taste.
Smells like leather. It smells like ocean water.
Oh Lord. That might be like an insult to the wine.
Oh gosh, yeah, no. It's not ocean water. It's way better. I didn't even taste it yet.
Yes,
It's
it does
kind of
have a bite.
dry. It's kind of dry too, which
I
I
think our
like
sommelier
a
would
lot.
be proud. So, on the back of the palate, it has a dry finish, a bite. It does have a bite.
Ooh.
I feel the bite.
It's the best we can do.
I'm glad you said the bite.
It's good, and it's very dark, and the legs are big or small.
It's best I don't talk about legs.
Let's keep going.
All right.
So today's topic is
Well, just to give some suspense, what have we talked about so far?
what have we talked about so far? So we have talked
Like
about.
non-negotiables, then negotiables, right? We talked about the three
So,
non-negotiables.
believe it or not, voting is a way in which you can exercise your faith. In fact,
Get excited about.
sometimes sometimes we are obliged to vote. In fact, oftentimes, most of the time, we are obliged to vote so that we can follow our conscience and play our role in society. Our faith is connected to our entire life, and that inevitably means politics. Now, the church does not tell you who to vote for and specifically what to vote for, although there are times where we can say, where we can be a little bit stronger than others on certain guidelines. So we have things called the non-negotiables, and then we have things that are negotiable. So the non-negotiables is the church saying, look, you have to vote this way. This is non-negotiable, and the reason that we are strong in it is because it's fundamental to who we are and who God is.
Right. It's just the root of what we believe.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fundamental to living out your faith and being a committed Christian. Then there's plenty of negotiables, which two good Christians can arguably disagree, and that's okay because they're coming at it from different perspectives, and there's freedom in that. So our non-negotiables was the dignity of human life from conception to natural death, the dignity of marriage between a man and a woman forever, and to be fruitful, and religious freedom, the ability to express your faith not only in private devotion but also in public life. Non-negotiable. We have to vote that way because if we lose one of those three things or all of them, our faith, our whole livelihood is at jeopardy.
It's just It's fundamental to what we believe, who we are as persons.
But there's some big political issues that are negotiable, and so we talked about. I'm trying to remember now. We talked about healthcare and economy last week.
Right. Talk about
What else did we talk about?
like war, justice.
Oh, war, just war, and capital punishment. Was there another one? I feel like. Oh, and then this is the third one.
Yeah.
And
so today we're going to talk about
two pretty controversial topics.
Yeah,
especially right here in Acadiana.
right immigration and ecology. So environment, ecology, environment. So
Yeah.
how does our faith influence our perspective, our lens to understand immigration and all this big talk about like protecting the environment, right? Man, that is just the environment, how divisive that can be when you start talking about it, right? I find, and I'm looking forward to getting to the conversation. I don't want to get too far ahead of us, but how some people can maybe take a political stance in one direction, but when they talk about like their family and their life experience and what they enjoy doing, it's actually contrary to what they're talking about. It's like, wait, you just went to a park, you just went fishing, and you talked about how beautiful it was and how clean the water was, and we.
So sometimes to match up with your ideas and your perspective, to match up with the way you actually live it out.
Yeah, it's getting us to think about,
Yeah, certainly. So immigration. Why don't we start there?
Yeah, sure.
Immigration. There are two. Well, okay. Whenever I guess before we start there, building the tension. During our negotiables conversation, we've been using these principles,
Right.
four principles, that being solidarity, meaning like social charity, and subsidiarity, meaning that the higher forms of governing bodies should not get involved unless they have to. So now let's apply that to immigration. In one sense, there's solidarity, which is the social charity. We are obliged to take care of one another. We all have human dignity, and there's that charity aspect. So this would be a pro-immigration principle.
With a favoritism to the poor, like
Yeah, and so there's different caveats of
Right.
solidarity. I mean, in addition to just simply taking care of each other, there's also the idea that, yeah, we especially need to take care for the
Sure.
poor. Also need to make sure that the resources within the earth, the basic needs, are provided for everyone.
Sure.
It doesn't mean that everybody has to have the same stuff, but
Right.
everybody needs their basic needs.
So
So that's pro
solidarity.
charity. That's pro
Pro-immigration.
immigration. Then on the other hand, similar to subsidiarity, but this is a little bit, I guess a better way to phrase it, the order of love is how I like to call it. St. Thomas Aquinas talks about this, that there is an order to love. Love is not chaotic. It's not disordered. Love has there is an order, a preferential structure to it. What do I mean by that? Well, for example, spouses. Well, first of all, we have to love God. We can love nothing else more than we love God. Spouses is like next, and children, obviously family. Okay, so like there's nothing that should take away from the love that you have for your family. From there, neighborhood or your local, broussard. From there, your state, then nation, then world. So there is something about if you were to, with good intention, go to San Francisco and spend 6 months there to serve people that are in need while neglecting your family, that's actually not a virtuous thing. You need to take care of your family. There is an order to that love. And so this principle at times could argue, possibly, against immigration depending on the circumstances.
Sure. So what I heard you say, just love those closest to you and those you are most immediately responsible for first, right?
Well
and then,
said.
And then begin. Well, you said it. I'm just
No, but love the recap.
Yeah. So just look, God is closest to me than my spouse. Honestly, like God is closer to me than anyone. So love God first, then love my family, my spouse, my kids, then my friends, and like the people I'm supposed to be responsible for. Make sure I'm not neglecting them before I begin to take care of others' needs, kind of thing.
Exactly. And so how does that
So
apply
when we-
to immigration?
Right. When we talk about, I'm just thinking like the United States or maybe locally like Broussard.
There's a tension.
Yeah.
Because a government is first primarily responsible for taking care of their own citizens. However, there is still that solidarity aspect of being hospitable to those that are in need, that come and visit, or maybe even visit long term. So there's a little tension there.
You've surfaced the immediate tension.
And the tension is not, we have to say this, not every immigration circumstance is the same. It is so diverse, and that's why we can't have a definitive thing about it, because there is just so many circumstances.
And it's not just
and effects.
Mexico and the United States, right?
Well, you bring up a great point.
Every country has a border, and you start talking about Europe, and all of just people crossing borders and seeking asylum in different places, and we think of memories of communist governments and people seeking to run from them and closing borders.
Think of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
I mean, people were fleeing their countries in order to seek safety. Think of right now, because of ISIS and different disturbances in the Middle East and threats in the Middle East. Yeah, like people are fleeing. A lot of times these are Christians that are fleeing to different countries seeking refuge.
Right.
So it's certainly a lot bigger than just the United States and Mexico border. However, that is one of the big issues. And then there's not every immigrant is the same situation. So some are coming in very good conscience because they really are in need, and they're looking for refuge. Others are, participating in unsafe activities. Maybe they're criminals or drug lords or part of a gang. And so it becomes very difficult to preserve that order of love as a nation.
Yeah. And
How do we not racially profile, but yet preserve the safety of our citizens, and at the same time welcome those that truly are in need? It's a very sticky line.
Sure. And if we're just honoring, the four guiding principles to help us make these decisions, dignity of the human person, common good, like specifically subsidiarity, this affects directly the states that are like specifically for us, the states that are bordering Canada and Mexico. So they may have a state may have a different policy than maybe the federal government is kind of wanting or directing. So the state may make a narrative and a policy, and then the federal government may come in above that and say, no, for the greater good, our view for the more common good, we're going to overturn that policy for the whole.
So there is a tension
states.
between
Yeah.
subsidiarity and the common good that you're articulating, because there's that tension between states that have absolute power. That tension is actually a good thing, but finding the right line is often difficult. But it's so important to bring up too. No matter where we stand on immigration, at whatever level in between the two principles you stand, this should go without saying, but we have to say it, is racism is never okay. There's never an instance where that's okay. To unjustly discriminate somebody based off of their race is there's no foundation for that in the gospel. In fact, it's quite the contrary. So I mean,
Yeah,
that's
I'm
just
thinking of, right, I'm glad you brought that up, like Matthew, in the Gospel of Matthew, it's all throughout the scriptures, but Matthew 25, it talks about like, welcome the stranger in your midst. When I was naked, you clothed me. Like Jesus says, when you took care of the stranger in your midst, when you took care of the orphan, the widow, those who had no home, when you took care of them, you took care of me. So it definitely pulls at the heartstrings of the Christian.
I mean, charity is the primary virtue that we're all called to. It's the way that we best imitate God, really.
Sure.
So yeah, all throughout Scripture. I mean, you mentioned Matthew 25. I mean, I think of Elijah and the widow of Zarephath who welcomes Elijah, a foreigner who she, didn't have to welcome. But she welcomed him in her home, and God blessed that during the famine.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like the year of St. Joseph, like Joseph and Mary fled to Egypt.
There
It
you
was
go.
a
Another
foreign
example.
land, like they crossed borders.
So
They
to think
were
that
seeking
Jesus
refuge.
had that experience of crossing a border and seeking refuge, there are these ideas of social charity, hospitality to those that are in need. So it's certainly not black and white. The only reason that we would say that you would not have an open border is to preserve that order of love. But that's not just to say that it's an absolute no.
Right.
It's it's a challenge to be creative on keeping first things first, but still being charitable.
Sure.
So
Good
not an easy
conversation.
topic.
Good conversation. Definitely. You can see how it's negotiable.
But it's definitely negotiable, right? It's not on the same level as the three non-negotiables of religious freedom, marriage, and human life. It's not on the same level, but it's still very important.
Let's talk about ecology or the environment. This ought to be fun.
So the environment, there's been definitely a big wave at least in my lifetime, a lot more interest in going green. See, I went green today.
That was very nice of you.
That wasn't even on purpose.
Wow.
I see you didn't. You got a little green tree right here.
I have a tree.
You have a tree.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. You are
Live oak.
pro-nature.
Yeah.
You're very pro-nature.
Long.
You tell me about your experience in the woods.
Yeah. A horrible experience. Like I say, horrible experience. Growing up, like I'll talk about how my perception of nature has changed. Like growing up with my dad, we would go hunting, fishing, but I just remember, I'm not proud of this now. I'm more ashamed of it, but like the way that we would throw and litter trash in, like when we go fishing, we just like throw stuff overboard, cans or just plastic, or even when we were hunting, like we would just drinking a pop or drinking a beer or whatever, we just kind of throw it in the woods.
Did you say pop?
Pop.
Where are you
Those
from?
are for the northeasterners.
Where is he
All
from?
those
We call it
northerners.
Coke down
Those are
here.
the people outside of Louisiana
It's
listening.
called Coke.
Yeah, Coke. The Edam. But then
Anyway,
what happens if you drink in a Pepsi and you call it a Coke?
that is what happens in Acadiana, and we're proud of it.
Yeah.
It's
okay.
Dr. Pepper, we call it Coke. Sprite, we call it Coke.
So anyway, had no sensitivity to the environment because I don't know, I wasn't appreciating what I was entering into. But now I am super sensitive to like putting trash where it belongs so that I can go back to the place I love and enjoy, and it can be like the way that God made it, and not the way that I am distorting it by my junk. You know, like I want to see it in the purity and the beauty that it is, and so.
And now the game warden would really get on you if he caught you. Wait,
Yeah.
did I call it right?
Yeah, game warden, nice job. Yeah, I'm not sure he'd probably give me a ticket for something else. Probably not littering.
Well, let's not get into that.
Right.
Goodness gracious. But
So beauty, I like just when I'm on the water, it's just.
well, that's one of the
I'm in
fundamental
awe. Like
gifts.
we go to vacation, right? You go to Destin. We go to Destin, and we just want to sit on the water on the beach and just look out.
So therapeutic.
And we're moved, I think, to encounter like our Creator, right? So environment's important.
Well, right. I mean, it's our home, and it's a gift from God. So why is this a political issue, and why is it, or how does it relate to our faith? And it goes back to the book of Genesis. Big surprise. All of these principles keep going back there.
Right.
But when God created the world in the very first chapter of the Bible, after each day he created a new piece of creation, and he always ended that day by saying it was good. God created the world good. And that just shows that there's this dignity even in creation, that creation and animals and plants, they all have this dignity because they are a reflection of God by being God's artwork. It's God's masterpiece. But now it is important to say that of all the things that were created, humans have a special dignity over and above everything else.
Yeah, we're the only ones made in His image and likeness.
Only ones in His image and likeness. Only ones that have reason, able to think and articulate thoughts, and free will and all that, to know and love God. But the rest of creation is still created by God. It's still His artwork, and it's therefore still we have a responsibility to treat it as such.
It has a dignity of its own.
And He was created for our dignity and ultimately for God's glory, not for our abuse and irresponsibility.
Right. To just, yes, use it for our own gain as a utility, but to respect it, like have dominion over creation, respect it, be a good steward of it. Like
you brought up a great point.
Use it for the means in which God gave it to us. It's not just for us; it's for all of humanity.
Back to our
this
principles.
Generation and the next generation.
So
right?
back to solidarity. There's a social charity that we have, not just me and you between one another, but with future generations. That is part of solidarity to provide a world that future generations can enjoy as well. So there's something about this intergenerational solidarity. But you brought up this dominion, which I love. Pope John Paul II, in his encyclical Evangelium Vitae, I think that's the Gospel of Life, chapter 42. He says this: the dominion granted to man by the Creator is not an absolute power, nor can one speak of a freedom to use and misuse or to dispose of things as one pleases. But he goes on to say it's not an absolute power. Instead, it's we are stewards. Yes, we do have dominion, but it's not just for our greedy consumption and use and misuse.
Right.
It's to reverence it. It's to celebrate the beauty and to receive the great gift that it is, so that when you go hunting in your duck blind, you can at least be grateful that it's beautiful outside.
Listen, please God, I see and have the opportunity to shoot 10 ducks, because
isn't it teal season next week or this week?
Teal season is happening this week. It's happening right now. Yeah, absolutely.
And you're here, right? Yeah.
Maybe slightly illegal. Then we talk about game wardens. No, but like environment. I mean, we didn't even get to like So we're kind of talking about being good stewards and being responsible. So like talking about consumption, we have to be responsible around our consumption of nature and the environment. And we have to be honest and we have to be truthful around this idea of solidarity. At a map globally of the countries that consume the most resources, there's an exponential skew for certain countries that consume far more of the massive major percentage of energy than the rest of the world. And so like we just can't be oblivious or blind to what that means and our mindset of why we do what we do. Do we see nature as something for us to consume, or do we see it as something for us to be stewards over and to be responsible? And if certain parts of the world are just ravaging, right, we have to legislate ourselves. We have to keep ourselves in honest balance of are we taking care? Are we
Yeah, it's really a mentality. We've it's this consumeristic mentality, which now that I bring it up, it reminds me of the contraceptive mentality, which we spoke about in the Theology of the Body series last year. But both mentalities, we give into this lie that we have absolute control over everything. And what that does, it makes us really selfish and greedy, and we overemphasize our own needs over the needs of others. And that just causes, that's the definition of sin. It just causes a plethora of problems. So this idea that like creation is merely for my consumption is very dangerous. It makes us so self-oriented, which is just not a healthy.
Right? It feeds off of consumerism. But when we translate that into how we perceive the environment, that we're just consuming it.
Right. There needs to be limits. There needs to be boundaries. Yes, we do consume. I have to eat food. I have to, but I have to wear clothes, all that. And it's not a bad thing to enjoy the fruits of creation, but when that's the only thing we can.
Right. Yeah, and listen, God regenerates, right? God is a God of life. He's not a God of death. And so I heard someone, I really appreciate their feedback to me was they made the point of, I don't see this generation talking about like my generation or younger.
Yeah, you're an old fart.
Yeah. So they said,
excuse my French.
They said like young people are not in the habit of planting trees. And he said because like trees are an investment. It's not an immediate gratification. It's like it's an investment. It's a long-term investment. So you're really not going to reap the benefit.
Depending on the tree, you may not see its glory in your lifetime.
A live oak. That's a 20, 30, 40, 50-year-old commitment to really appreciate like
that would be intergenerational solidarity.
Exactly.
How many trees have you planted?
Wow.
Oh, the tragedy of the younger generation that doesn't plant trees.
I have a lot of squirrels in our backyard, and I don't shoot them because I reverence them. And I know the squirrels plant.
Kind of like your garden that you planted but really didn't plant.
And pecans are trees are coming up like crazy. So I think indirectly
keep on going. I just cut you off.
No. I think indirectly I planted a lot of trees,
Indirectly. That's neat. Okay, so why don't we talk a little bit as we kind of close up, just what the purpose or ways in which the world and the environment really is for God's glory.
To have property, to have a space, to call this mine, that I'm going to take care of this, I'm going to be responsible for it, I'm going to tend it. So this idea of being a home for us.
Yeah, and the third is it's a resource, Yes, trees make paper or wood for burning, which provides heat. It's provide food for us, so our clothing was made from nature. So it's a resource for us that we can use to our advantage to meet our basic needs and to flourish. But why is this a political issue? The reason it's political is the how. How do we take care of it and be good stewards? There's a lot of discussion about the fossil fuels and the global quality of water, or pollution in general, the pollution of the air, or even just forestry, like how many trees are too much to cut down, preservation of species. Well, it's obviously not black and white. These are some really hard issues. But hear us out. What the church is saying, it's definitely not black and white. Um, but as we approach all of these issues, we do have to be keep at the forefront of the conversation that creation is our home. It's a gift from God, and we do have a responsibility to be good stewards, not only for our generation but generations to come.
Sure. Listen, I have learned so much from you and from this study about just the political process, about how our faith does weave into every part of our life, especially politics and the political system, how we are really called to influence our society and culture, not just by evangelizing and spreading the word of God, but by the way, influence policy that will influence our country, that will influence the world, that will make change.
Which is to say, our faith is more than a private devotion. Our faith impacts our entire life. And the way we live our life really does affect the way that others live their lives. So it's a challenge.
Get out there and vote. Make sure you
Definitely
vote.
get out there and vote, but definitely do your research, form your conscience,